Eric, you woke?
Am I woke? Well, I'm awake.
Do you believe it's harmful to businesses, or is it necessary for progress?
What do you think I'm going to say? Woke culture, it promotes victim mentality. It stifles free thought. If you don't agree with me in a woke society and I am mainstream narrative, you get shut down. You're an enemy. You're hated. And I'll be honest, we don't want you here. And there's probably a truer way to say that statement. We don't want you here. I know if I get too honest on this, I'll get canceled by the platform that I'm speaking this information to. So I'll be careful with my words, but they don't want you here anymore. Woke really is harmful. Businesses should focus on genuine change if that's what's actually needed. But I would really argue that traditional values are really what the change needs to go back to. God has been replaced with government. Government is replacing parents and school. Ideology that is dangerous is sort of being pumped in like it's like a saving grace to some terrible country that we've all been born into, which we're actually the freest nation on the planet historically. There's more opportunity here than anywhere on planet Earth. And our history is one where we actually had a civil war where half the America killed the other half to end sort of a lifelong thing throughout the history of mankind that has been around in every culture and every civilization forever, and that's slavery. America was the idea that put a contract in place that would one day be so divine that it would be the thing that actually set a standard in the world. It would unite the world. It would create more opportunity than anything in the world. It created and unleashed people's potential. Just that document. It took a long time to get here, but now we're here and it's almost like we're going backwards. Instead of using character to sort of judge, we're doing the opposite now. We're going right back to sort of judging based on things that you have no control over. Wokeism is such a detriment to society. Real change should be about empowering the individuals, creating opportunities, encouraging diverse viewpoints without being bowed to the pressure of this cancel culture. Progress comes from open dialogue, not censorship. And that is the problem. And when you really look back in history, this is not the first time like real censorship, which is so apparent now. It's been happening for a long time. Now it's just so blatant. It's like they're going for broke. They don't really care. COVID really unleashed something I saw. It's like they really started being bold, almost like they're not trying to hide it anymore. And it's like, man, well, they're going for broke. And magically, like in an election year where China was on its knees, you had the most powerful economy in the world. First time ever America was energy independent. We literally had the probably strongest economy I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. And there's a lot of metrics in that. Our business, I mean, just our business alone, like people that know. I've never seen things hum like that. So from politically, those years, the Trump years, the policy that was in place was so profound and so powerful from a perspective of sort of like the economics that were at work. Zero inflation, the strongest dollar in the history of mankind. You really had so much unique setup there. And all of a sudden, like that in an election year, when really China for the first time in decades was on their knees. Because trade was something that even Obama talked about doing. Every president going back to Reagan, even Reagan, who I'm a huge fan of, one of my favorite presidents in the world, talked about having fair trade. But it's a very hard thing to go after because it could disrupt the economy. And Trump was the one guy that's talked about it, but actually did something about it. And what he proved is it didn't disrupt the economy, which it could have actually. I was questioning if the stock market was going to tank, if prices were going to get inflated because we rely on China so much for goods, right? It's slave labor there that we are buying. We're actually promoting slavery. People don't understand how shit works. What actually happened in the Trump years is you got flooded with repatriation of foreign dollars back into America. They were actually brought back in tax-free. It was such an incentive for companies that were doing business overseas because it was cheaper to do business there, it was more competitive, to bring those manufacturing jobs back to America. And you saw a surge in manufacturing sort of come back to America. Now, products, whether you like it or not, got to be made somewhere. Why not make them at home where we have so many people starving in our own communities, right? Trump really incentivized sort of like the remanufacturing boom through trade. It all happened through trade, and then the repatriation of sort of tax-free dollars to sort of be able to be brought back free without being taxed. It was sort of such a push for American sort of ingenuity to have that sort of revival, Make America Great Again, it had a lot of unique connections to sort of the old days when things were made in America, quite literally. People don't understand what really happened in those years. It's not talked about. It's not articulated. That's why I wish I could debate for Trump. I would do a much better job than him. No offense. He's great at being a leader and just being a boss that gets it done. He's not that good at vividly painting pictures of what actually is happening right now. He just speaks in sort of like one-line thoughts, and then he gets made fun of all the time. But the truth is, his policy was genius, and he had enough courage and gall to do it. Now, I don't know if it was luck or not, but at the end of the day, China was on their knees. Energy independence, no wars in 4 years. Was there 1 year during war ever in your lifetime except the Trump years? The answer is no. It was the first 4 years of worldwide peace where there was not one war being fought. And you had probably the strongest presidential leader in American history, potentially, based on his policy. He executed on something that everyone's talked about ever since China in the 1980s really became a powerhouse through this cheap labor, which inflated sort of the price of American-made goods, and we started buying plastic from China. That's how it all worked. And what it did is it stole from American economy, and it made us dependent on a foreign entity. During COVID, what did we see during COVID? Supply chain crushed like that, right? It's because we rely on foreign nations. We don't make our own goods in-house. Everything stopped. The supply chain of those ships coming across from foreign third world countries and dictatorships, all these places where like we are now a slave to their products, that is actually creating slavery in those nations, which is actually boosting their economy in record numbers. Trump did something that nobody ever talks about. He went after trade, and guess what happened? It had the opposite effect of what every economist predicted. A lot of people said, and I did question it because I heard it, and it made kind of sense. That could literally jack the prices up of everything that Americans rely on, including their medicine, because everything's made overseas. You saw American ingenuity forced back into this country. And then he paired that with the lowest corporate tax rate, maybe ever. I mean, it was just such a good tax structure that created so much innovation. You know how many jobs were sort of created in that boom? And then all of a sudden, everything was going, and again, this is 4 years of Russia. He's an asset to the Russian, blah, 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 blah. Oh, there's worldwide peace, by the way. He's a Russian asset, worldwide peace. Second, he's not president, Russia invades Ukraine. I mean, second Biden's in office, war everywhere. I can't fathom how people don't see what we see, right? So consider this, like dig deep on this, because I'm glad you're asking these questions, and it's worth it to do a long form on this. Really consider how all this works. You had all these jobs sort of rushing back. You have China on their knees, no world wars happening. America's dollar is as strong as it's ever been. You're having corrupt nations that are communist nations literally go broke in real time. That economy was tanking. What happened in about December, arguably January, but definitely February of 2020, in the election year? There was a little bug that was released in the world that came out of Wuhan. Interesting, right? Crazy, isn't it? Because that little bug, it set off a series of events in America, one of them that being mail-in ballot votes, which was quickly pushed as the thing that was going to have to happen. We can't let you go to the post office. And then on every media station, you'd have a ticker of people that just died. Quick, tick, tick, everyone's dying. Where's the ticker of people dying today of fentanyl overdose? Where's the ticker today of people dying of heart disease? Where's the people today dying of, there's so many things, bro, cancer. There was such an incentive to put such a fear of God in this little bug that all of us got. I got it a couple times, you know what I'm saying? Second time, it wasn't even that bad. First time, I was sick. I was for sure sick, but I got through it. I've been sick a lot in my life. I was actually the last time I was sick. That was almost 4 years ago now. I haven't been sick for fucking 4 years. That was the last time I was sick was when I had COVID. It was bad. It was November of 2020. Point is this is long form. I'm giving it all to you right now. I'm going to end here strong. You have a very important year right in front of you. China's on their knees. All of a sudden, there's a bug that comes out of a lab. They thought it was a bat. There's all this confusion. Trump becomes the bad guy. They're tripping him up. All these systems in America, these institutions were sort of weaponized against Trump during those years. DOJ, FBI. There were so many sort of deep-rooted snakes in politics that run these departments that were embedded in past administrations. And then when Obama leaves, they get to stay put. Those are kickbacks. Those are favors. That's how politics works. Trump had to go in and he called it a swamp. Again, like he didn't gain sort of, I think, the understanding in the marketplace that it should have. These people are not elected in there. They're put in there. and they have a lot of power, more power than a president in many cases, because they never leave. And they get rich off politics. They get rich off taxpayers. You have someone in the Senate that's been there how many years? I mean, Harry Reid, he died. He was a senator in Nevada, and he literally was the richest senator in the history of America when he died, right? You know, he's never had a private job in his life. He's been a senator since he was a kid. Nobody should be in politics that long. The one thing the founding fathers got wrong, and again, this will tie back, just bear with me, is they didn't put term limits in. They did it for a president, but they didn't do it for everyone else. And the reason why, it was an accident. They couldn't see the future. They didn't know there was going to be trains one day. They didn't know there was going to be airplanes. They couldn't even imagine what that means. They didn't know there was going to be vehicles. When the founding fathers sort of wrote the rules for our nation, the reason term limits didn't come is because they thought, who on God's green earth would ever want to be a politician longer than 4 years? Max 8, right? They just knew that no one's going to want to make this a career. There's no money in it. Go build your business, build your farm, go build your life. No one's going to want to do this. This is about duty and service. You get in and you get out, and it's the next generation that takes over, right? That's where they screwed up. No one assumed that they were going to be able to go vote in Washington if you lived in San Francisco. You're not going to take a horse and buggy every time you need to vote. Well, now that there's airplanes, they can do it in one day. People knew back then, there's no way you're going to do that. That's a hard thing to do, is to vote in Washington, D.C., where a vote had to be cast. Now, everything's so digital. The point in me telling you this is to connect a lot of dots for you. The deep state is real. People make all their money in the deep state. That's where all the favors, the kickbacks. Trump, this outsider who's not a politician, who all politicians used to love, all Democrats used to love him, all black people used to love him, rappers used to love him. All of a sudden he comes in and he promotes a policy that is meant to wipe out people that are getting rich off taxpayers. Now, he's a real entrepreneur. He's filed bankruptcy before. Rightfully, he shouldn't, and he did it. He did it to, again, people don't understand the rules of how this works or how business works. It was one of the most strategic bankruptcies ever. He was able to leverage his bankruptcy to rewrite terrible loans, and it worked. This is good business practice. Everyone looks at him, he's so stupid. Look at his golf courses, his towers, and all these different cities. I'm always blown away when I pull up on a Trump property somewhere that I didn't even know existed. The guy's done a lot, and he does it because he knows how to employ people, get people moving. He really is the voice of the working man. Historically, go look back in history and you'll find it's right there. Every construction site in America knew Trump. He'd come down there, he'd get his hands on it. They just loved working for him. He was a darling of the left. He gave Hillary Clinton money, and all of a sudden he runs just to say, you know what, I don't like the way it's going. Let's make America great. Let's run policy and run this country like it's a business. That means if you don't produce, you get cut. Why? What are you doing? Trump's the type of guy that says, you're fired because you do nothing and you have a huge salary. What do you do? Why are we cutting all these bureaucracies around? Everyone hates Trump in government, right and left, because he's cutting their connections out. He's literally gutting a government that is so inefficient. Everyone hated Trump. China's on their knees, but guess who's winning? The American people, black communities, Hispanic communities, minority communities. All around America, there's this heartbeat of reproduction in America. The momentum was so good. People forget what that year was like. It was the best year ever when it comes to economy, ever. History of the world. All the metrics, and crazy metrics, by the way. Zero interest rates. I mean, money was free almost, cheap to borrow, easy to get, and economy was real. That's what a real, you're moving towards free market now. This is what it is. This is what it actually looks like. But he couldn't get past the indictments. He couldn't get past the assaults. He couldn't get past the media. They just would not stop. And he didn't have the level of communication to be able to ward it off the way I think even someone like me would have been able to ward off. I would have been able to sort of work through it and probably could have landed a plane a lot better, a lot softer, winning where he needed it. Trump's just not like that. And that's what makes him so great. That's probably why he was the right man for the job, actually. You kind of need that kind of guy. But it was painful that no one ever really spoke to what was actually happening. They would always try to trip him up. And they did such a good job at having these mic moments that made him look so crazy and so stupid, but not realizing that everything that's happening right now is a gift for people that are in the minority communities here in America. Even for people that are immigrants here. Oh my God, he was a godsend. And he just did what worked good, like a business guy does, like an entrepreneur. Let's look at this. And there's no wars, by the way. The guy that they said was going to create World War III. Remember the nukes? They can't let him have the nukes. The media just torched this guy. And what did they do? They went after him for 4 years. They indicted him. They stole an election during COVID. And that's where the last point I'll say is the first thing that happened after COVID, it was released from China somehow, a bat, a lab, Wuhan. First thing that was apparent was voting was going to change forever. What is mail-in ballot voting? Like, what is that? Where's the verification process? Where's my signature? One last story. This is long form. We're going to use all this. I got a ballot that election year from the state of Nevada, mailed to, bizarrely, it was my parents' house in Idaho. Don't ask how. Crazy, right? It said Eric Andrew Rock. My wife got one in the same mailbox. Jeanette Sunday Rock. 2 ballots from the state of Nevada. I had not lived in the state of Nevada for over a decade. My primary had been in Idaho. My parents had moved to Idaho, made their primary there, and all of a sudden, ballots come in the mail for Jeanette and me to my parents' house. The reason that happened, you got to really think about this logically. You want to talk about fraud? So many cases of it, and the media just didn't go near it. Nobody prosecuted. No one fought for it. Trump had everything going against him, and they just stole like I'd never seen, but it happened right in front of Americans' eyes. This happened to me, though. It's a real story. We get these ballots, and we thought, me and my dad were really pissed about it. We thought, how's this happen? I've not been enrolled to vote there forever. I voted in Idaho for 10 years. They had to drum up old voter logs during that election year, and they had to figure out, okay, where does this guy likely live in America? They actually had to map out, I don't know what technology they used or how they figured it out or what they tapped into, but they had to take an American old voter log, put it in the mail, send it out in the mail somewhere, trying to get it to me, right? Now, I could have just marked Trump on there and did it. I ripped it up, threw it away. I knew this was gonna happen, and it did. After the election, when Trump lost, after weeks of counting the ballots that are still coming in all the key states, right? Arizona takes 3 weeks to figure out. Okay, sure. Never in the history have we not known the election winner the next morning, ever, except the hanging Chad year. We know, but all of a sudden we have technology, but we don't know? No, it doesn't work that way. The mail-in ballots, we haven't counted them all. Let's keep counting until you wake up in the morning, it's like everything's changed. We saw it, everyone saw it, we know. Well, after that election, we knew he lost, which was just pure fraud. I called the state of Nevada. You can actually check. I can't see who I voted for or Jeanette voted for, but if you're registered to vote in a state, you can see if a vote had been cast in your name. I call the state of Nevada and I figure out that a vote has been cast in Jeanette's name and my name. Don't know who I voted for, but we ripped those up. Why did they come in the mail? Who voted for me? How did that happen? This created so much fraud in America. All you need is the right districts in the right states, and you could sway an election pretty damn easily. And Trump said it the whole time. The media would just like say, "Oh, that's a threat to democracy. You're inciting violence and riots." And then you saw what happened on the day he lost the election. He probably made a misstep for sure. But you had all these people storm the Capitol. They walked around. They put on Nancy Pelosi's desk. No one got harmed. One person got shot at the end of the day. It was a crime, but if you really look at what happened in that crime, it was a police officer. Do you know what I mean? That shot someone else. The whole concept here is trying to understand what really happened. And at the end of the day, you literally had an election being stolen right in front of you. This is a narrative and a story that just got pushed right under the rug. And I'm a testimony to the amount of fraud that happened on many different accounts, even in our core business during that year of COVID. Do you know how many fraudulent claims that were made for our business for kids that have worked there like 7 years ago that were making for unemployment that they were granting? State of Washington, in that store we had up here in Washington, just granting unemployment at record numbers. That's taxpayer, that's real money. That's money of the people that generate that are just going out to fraud. You're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars fraudulently just eaten up in this country. You have 20 years of backlogs of fraud created. That's what they said. COVID created so much confusion, so much disruption. They took out a president. They tried to put him in jail. He's been resilient the whole time, focused on his message. Now he's been tried to be assassinated twice. And you want to talk about a threat to democracy? This is what's sad about this, is the way that I was able to just give this all to you through the lens of which I saw organically. This is how I saw it as a business owner, as a person that loves to think, as a person that loves to study history. These are the dots that I connect when you ask me these types of questions. And right there, if I'm wrong, I would love to be able to debate it without being censored, without being canceled. Like, just talk to me about it. Like, have a debate on this subject in a really powerful way. Whether you're left or right, this is a conversation that we could articulate and try to understand what happened that year. Why did it happen? Because all of a sudden, CODIS just died and no one dies of it anymore. But the people that actually are dying today, they're strange deaths. And it seems to be like really pointed at a vaccine that had never gone through any trials, that had been pushed on America, that really made drug companies so rich, filthy rich, high stock price valuations of these companies ever. Pfizer through the roof, Merck through the roof. All these drug companies that are pushing all these sort of drugs now are just, and you know who these people donate money to? the Democratic Party. They literally have them in their back pocket. The circle of money is so powerful and it's so connected, but no one talks about it. No one understands that there's one guy that's for people in this whole setup. It's the only non-politician that's trying to be in politics right now. And he's not doing it to live a cushy life. Well, he can just coast out the rest of his life. He's now getting shot at. He had a bullet miss his head, exploding on national TV by about this big. Guy's just sitting on a roof, plain as day, by the way. What Secret Service is watching him? Whatever happened to that guy, by the way, we don't even know. Like, you know if that would have been Obama, what this would have looked like? Why don't we know anything about that original shooter? What happened to him? Who is he? Who's Jeffrey Epstein? We know anything about him? Tell me something about these people that are creating some of the most heinous crimes in the world, trying to rewrite history quite literally. You take Trump out, bro. He may be the one person that's standing between you and tyranny. And people are so indoctrinated and so stupid they just can't see it.